G'day legends, I hope that you're doing really well. Now, today's video is going to be out later because I've been cleaning out a blocked pipe all day. It still hasn't fixed it, but I've got it a lot better in my house. Anyway, today we're going to talk about something from the CIA that we've sort of seen before. We're going to look over the news of the day with some attackums, some planes as well. At the end, we will, of course, then have a look at the maps. Now, the news has been a lot slower in the recent couple of days, even weeks. We have seen Robertini fall, but then just a lot of slowness. And I know this because I report on the news and I look over so many different sources, and it is getting to be a lot slower. So I want to look at maybe why this could be, and we'll also look over what Zelensky has said. But first, I got sent a theory off a friend of mine who spoke about, as little as we credit as we may give him, did Prigozhin's plan of the Bakhmut meat grinder actually somewhat work? So it was no doubt that in Bakhmut, both Russia and Ukraine had very similar plans. That Bakhmut itself was very strategically important, mainly for it was an area of which they both were claiming they admitted mass casualties on the other side. Both Russia and Ukraine were like, it's worth us holding here and continuing the fight because the amount of people we're taking down here is so crazy. And we said at the time, I think both are telling the truth, that both sides are killing a lot of their enemy, but also taking massive casualties. There, we know Prigozhin said in the tens of thousands, with a lot of prisoner conscripts and from Wagner PMC, but a lot of regular Russian soldiers in there as well as the VDV, who took up the flanks then of Wagner PMC. But on the flip side of this, did it somewhat work against Ukraine? Because Prigozhin at the time and the Russian MOD was saying that we're taking down so many Ukrainians that they're not going to be able to launch offensives from here. And we have seen the offensive move significantly slower than we had hoped. And maybe that Bakhmut meat grinder has stopped definitely Russia from launching full-scale offensive actions, as well as the mass losses they took in the beginning of this conflict. But has it somewhat really hindered Ukraine's ability to have those own offensive actions? As we don't know how many casualties they took there, but we know it probably was very, very large. So somewhat did Russia sacrifice their own offensives for Ukraine to not have maybe the personnel or some of the equipment there as well. We know that area was the meat grinder for both sides to a massive, massive level. So let's look at what President Zelensky has said on Friday, so yesterday. This was published, so you can go and look at it if you'd like, on the President of Ukraine, his official website. Anyway, the sooner Ukraine receives more powerful long-range weapons, the faster the counteroffensive and liberation of Ukrainian lands from the occupiers will take place. This was stated by the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in a panel discussion on the 18th at the Yalta European Strategy meeting. The future is decided in Ukraine. Now, he said, it is important that our warriors are advancing and that we have the initiative on our side. We should not compare what happened yesterday. We must compare where we all were in another life on February the 24th, when there was a feeling of occupation of our state. And today we have liberated a large part of our territory. And we're going to talk about this a bit later on, as Ukraine has liberated more over the past 24 hours. But the president noted that he understands the desire of the people to restore the territorial integrity of Ukraine as soon as possible, because ultimately peace and tranquility in our country and throughout Europe and the world will be achieved when Ukraine regains all of its territories. At the same time, Volodymyr Zelensky noted that the war waged by Russia on the territory of Ukraine is complex and many processes are slowing down. So he is saying that he's slowing down. As we spoke about right in the beginning of this video, that things tend to be very slow. There's not that much coming out. Anyway, he says the war is slowing down. We recognise this fact. All processes are becoming more complicated and slower, from the sanctions to the provision of weapons. So right in the start, we saw, okay, this weapon's been approved, this has been approved, that's been approved, all this rolling on. Russia's fighting this way, Ukraine's fighting that way, that we spoke about, basically earlier this year, that this is going to become a war of attrition, that things are moving so slowly. And if you actually look at the amount of ground taken, regained, whatever, in 2022, for both sides is more than has been taken this entire year. Russia has really taken one big strategic point, being Bakhmut and surrounds around there, and Ukraine with then Uruzhany, Robertini there. But we're talking nowhere near the same amounts. And let's just have a look on the map. So, look, of course, on the Russian side, we have taken, well, ignore the purple bits, that's been occupied since 14. But look at the red. This was all taken, basically all, since in 2022. Now, and this green area, Kharkiv, Kherson, this was pushed back at the end of 2022. About this time, it's a year since, I believe, the Kherson offensive or the Kharkiv. It's a year since one of them. But this year, what we've really seen is we've seen Bakhmut, and in this current counteroffensive, we've seen to the south of Kyiv, Robotyne, and down near here, near Rozhny Staromorsky area, and some other pushes, but none of these huge moves. So it is definitely slowing down. Now let's continue on this. I've got about 50 open. Anyway, he says, when some partners say, so what about the counteroffensive? When will the next step be? My answer is that today our steps are probably faster than new sanctions packages. So pushing back that you're not putting sanctions in as fast as we're even moving on the front line. But we do know that the sanctions, they're not working as much as some would have thought there. If the sanctions were really, really working, well, we wouldn't be asking, I guess, for more of them, and we'd see more of an effect. Yes, they do have an effect, but not as much as, I think a lot would really hope that they then have. The head of state emphasised that Ukraine needs specific equipment, in particular modern fighter jets, to accelerate counter-offensive actions. And we know that about 70 will be going into Ukraine maybe next year. And I say maybe because, look, it's been said mid-next year, but the Abrams were said, the end of this year. We still haven't seen them, and it's been rumoured today that it's been pushed even longer on the training there. Now, he says more, but sorry, I should say on that as well, but Yuri Inhart, of course, who is the Air Force spokesman in Ukraine, has said that they need significantly more than that. They're talking in the mid-100s to have a realistic effect. And I think with some of this, I'm like, well, Russia's got absolute air dominance. They don't have superiority, but they do in the fast jet area, they do. And it hasn't made that much of a difference for Russia. What difference will we actually see on the swing of the tide here with a Gen 4 aircraft, which Russia has the equivalent of a Gen 4 aircraft? Yeah, an F-16 may be better than a lot of Russian fighters, but it's going to be like this. It's not like this. They were made specifically to fight each other, and you can look up a lot of interviews of Western pilots who have gone and flown some of those aircraft as well. So it will make a difference, but like I say again and again, if these fighters can't hit things, if these can't hit things within Russian territory, they cannot complete the seed and deed missions, and that amount probably isn't enough. Anyway, he continues, there are specific square kilometres of our land, and each liberated metre is a human life. So there is, of course, a huge cost to this as well. The longer it takes, the more people suffer. What is the impact of weapons? Concrete and direct, without abstractions and rhetoric. There is a specific impact of a specific weapon. The more powerful and long-range it is, the faster the counteroffensive is. The faster the restoration of our country is. If we are not in the sky, and Russia is, they stop us from the sky. They stop our counter-offensive. So saying that the counter-offensive is really stalling due to they're not having that air power, but they're not going to have that air power for a long time. Maybe next year's offensive, and we say maybe next year's offensive, so it's going to be a long time. Zelensky expressed gratitude to all Ukraine's partners led by the US who provide defence assistance and strengthen Ukraine Defence Force to liberate all our lands. So we do know here that he's saying it is really stopping because of that. And the mines being laid, things like this. And, this just because wherever this counteroffensive ends at the end of this year, it's not going into Donetsk and Crimea. We just know it does not have enough time to do that by the end of the year. As we looked at yesterday from the DIA in the States, they're already saying we're getting ready for then the next 12 months, the next offensive from there. Well, Russia will, depending where Ukraine get to this year, now we're down in here, and a lot of cities, they need to get into Tokmak. Russia's not going to not build up more defensive lines, and what they're going to learn from what has happened here. They're going to go, well, okay, what stalled Ukraine the most? Minefields. Right, okay, they're in this area here somewhere by, when winter comes, there's not too much more movement. Right, okay, let's just mine the shit out of everything down here. And that sort of idea that if they can't have it, no one can have it. It's a bit like that in Bakhmut. Although Russia's taking mass casualties, maybe that much they can't continue offensive action, but maybe we'll inflict so many they can't either. It's just this. If one can't have it, no one can have it. And they just might mind strip the whole area here and dig in more defensive works, as well as the mass mobilisation that there is rumoured to be. We know there's going to be a mobilisation and more recruiting. Russia is, both voluntary and conscript soldiers is going, but many are even saying that they're looking maybe at another 500,000 million soldiers on the call up from there, and Russia may be bringing people back who have left Russia, extradite them back to then sign up and fight in this, similar to what Ukraine is doing as well. So the fight is definitely on here, and we have really got to a part where things are moving very slowly. We're talking in tens of square kilometres, not mass movements. But we may see larger movements once there are certain breakthroughs in areas. We may see things speed up, slow down. But at the end of the day, we've cleared some small villages, down Robotyne, Uruzhany, nothing the size of, Tokmak, Melitopol, Sevastopol, Donetsk, Luhansk, and none of that, and no ground that's been held since 14 either. And Russia will have the ability to continue, propping up those defensive works, more landmines, making more mines. Where the sanctions really hit Russia is on that high-tech equipment, chips, things like this, but just landmines, just fucking mines, which have been one of the biggest, because a mine is so dumb, like a drone, a plane, whatever, that reacts to EW, it can see on radar, it can be jammed, this sort of shit. But the dumber something is, you just can't do anything about it. So that's where like dumb weapons have such an effect, is because, well, you can't really do anything about it, poke it with a stick. That's about it. And that's where mines have this such an effect. Now, we have seen more too of the infamous tyres on top of the plane. And we have finally a significantly better image here of this. So then I said fly-by-wire and not fly-by-tyre, which I believe is very, very funny. Now, what is this actually for? Well, I've spoken to a heap of people, and everyone seems to have the same idea, that these are to break up the signature of these planes for the targeting systems of the drones, whether it's visual by infrared, whether it's maybe by say AI. I know everyone loves to throw AI around with bloody everything. Apparently this shitty remote has AI in it now. It's just a marketing term. But if the AI is looking for a specific shape, maybe this can trick it a little bit. But I always laugh at the tyres on the end pylons here as well of this aircraft, which I believe is very funny. But a lot of people are pointing out that these do look like older aircraft, that, this one does look a little bit shabby. Now, I'm taking this from someone, but they have said as well that the other aircraft have seen the bombers with it, things like missing engines, whatever from here, and this one does look, older off somewhere else. So what people are talking about is, well, is this not like they're a real plane, but maybe to remove the engine as a bit of almost a distraction as well at night? We're not really sure. Put them in hangars, yeah. But I think people don't understand that, like, even down the road at RAF Edinburgh, where I used to work at the Air Force Base, not every plane there has a hangar either. But I think that seeing these like cardboard drones, cheap drones like this, making such a huge effect that we will see. And we're learning so much from this war. We're getting a shitload out of this war. People go, we're spending billions and billions. Like, yeah, but we're probably saving billions and billions too, going, right, okay, these cheap drones can do this. We need every aircraft now in a fucking hangar. But it is very interesting with these tyres as well. And, weight on the fuselage, a whole range of things. But it must have some effect. It must have some effect. Everyone laughed at the cope cages in the beginning until we started seeing cope cages. So if in 6 months' time we see an F-16 with tyres on it, I will fucking piss myself laughing. But it is fairly stupid. But like we said the other day, these must be chained or something together, or maybe they're just stacked up on top of the wing around there. But interesting either way, and fairly embarrassing of a country that is very, very caring about optics. Now, Ukraine mentioned in the speech we talked about in the beginning, then about long-range weapon systems going into Ukraine. Now, the ABC has released an article about ATACMS, the longer-range missiles that can go into the HIMARS system as well. And look at the bloody size of this thing. So we're going to look at what then the ABC said. The Biden administration is likely, so keyword likely, to send Ukraine long-range arming tactical missile systems, or ATACMS. So something in that, to help in its fight to repel the Russian invasion of its territory, according to US officials. So one official has said they are coming, but the official noted that, as always, such plans are subject to change until officially announced. So we don't really know. A second official has said the missiles are on the table and likely to be included in an upcoming security assistance package, adding that a final decision has not been made. It could be months before Ukraine receives the missiles, according to the official. So they have a lot longer range, of a range up to 190 miles, so 300 Ks, depending on the version. Deploying ATACMS would allow Ukraine to reach targets nearly 4 times further away than the currently provided rockets for its US-made HIMARS 270 and 270 multiple launch rocket systems. So I've seen a few people point at one of the big things with this is also the speed of the weapon. So the ATACMS speed is about Mach 3.5, and the ones they've got currently are like Mach 2.5. So it's a fair bit faster. And even a Storm Shadow, I know it's a different type of missile system, but still only has a speed of Mach 0.8, so below the speed of sound there. And that can have a large effect, especially then on air defense systems, as well as picking it up in the sky, moving things. It does have an effect from there. Now, before we have a look at the maps, the CIA has released 3 videos to date aimed at Russians with, I guess, intelligence, maybe upper echelons in ranks, and of course spies who work for things like the FSB. Now, we're going to watch these videos. We've seen a few of them, and we've watched all the other ones as well. What I did laugh at, though, was this video, because like I make money off ads on YouTube, and it's no secret that YouTubers make about $3 to $5 per 1,000 views, maybe. So if this video is at 10,000 views, I might make $30 to $50. And you can work that out. If you look at some other YouTubers who get 1 million views, well, you can see how that adds up very quickly. There's a few YouTubers who get millions a day. So very interesting. But this is the video that's been released by the CIA, who has a budget, I should say, of $3.2 billion. So I don't really know why these are then monetized. That $3.2 billion, that's the official release. It's probably fucking double of that. So let's have a watch of this.
Что правда имеет какую-то ценность. Раньше я верил, что честность не останется без награды. Но я никогда не умел искусно лгать. Это я всем твердил, что искажать правду в отчетах – это бессовестно. Но по службе продвигались именно те, кто это делал.
So talking about if you feel like uncomfortable lying, not telling the truth, things like this, pushing towards if you're smarter than this, come and contact us.
Я тут влачу жалкое существование со своими принципами. Похоже, что я все-таки научился лгать. Самому себе. Как бы я хотел рассказать правду. Как бы я хотел снова поверить в то, что правда имеет ценность. И честность вознаграждается. Я порядочный человек. Я человек, который все еще работает по совести. Я человек, который наконец-то может жить, не пренебрегая своими принципами. И кому не безразлична судьба Родины.
And at the end here it says, the people around you may not want to hear the truth. We want to. And then it says, you are not powerless, contact us securely. So this bit says, you are not powerless, contact us securely. And then it gives CIA badge, of course, and then ways to contact through then secure means, Tor links, normal stuff used like that for secure means of communication. We've seen multiple of these appealing to, you want to tell the truth, you want to be one of the good guys, come and do this. And there would 100% be people within the high ranks of the Russian forces and, of course, their intelligence services as well, who are, sending information across to the Americans or to some other agency, as well as, in other agencies around the world. There are probably a lot of guys sending shit into Russia as well. That world, I'm guessing, is incredibly murky in there as well. But don't think that these agencies don't have all the backing of all their other, look into everyone's history as well, as much as the FSB will be looking into people's histories too. But there would be information sent across, and I guarantee there's probably people working for the Americans there as well. We saw $500,000 given to a Russian pilot for a very old bloody helicopter and some parts flown across into the country. Imagine what it would be if you're some FSB officer with, whatever amount of intelligence or a direct route into whatever. If it's $500K for a shitty old helicopter, realistically, I know it's a very tactical item, a strategic item, but it's nowhere near what information like this would be. So probably huge monetary benefit there, but they're also appealing to doing the right thing, as people that work in these agencies are going to be incredibly intelligent people that work in intel agencies. Now, let's have a look over the maps. Of course, we have Ukraine in the center and the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22 and the purple since 14. This is, of course, all what Ukraine is trying to clear out and liberate their territories. Of course, this is Russia, Belarus, Poland, and Romania around here. Now, let's zoom in on where we're seeing the most western movement is to the south of Old Kiev in the Robotyny front. So let's go back 24 hours and then to today. So we see Ukraine have just a slight push further up into some defensive works here through Robotyny and up past the outskirts, and getting closer then to this Novoporivka in here as well. I know that is pronounced shockingly, and we just see that movement and a further westerly push out here as well. So pushing more and more in that region. Now let's have a look over a few other maps around here as well. So let's have a look at this region from yesterday then till then today. Now I don't have an ISW in here either. So this is yesterday, sorry. Now I've done it. And this is that one. That's the one I'm after. Now, let's have a look at what is showing much different here. So yesterday and then today on the zoom in this specific area. And it doesn't show really any difference here. It does show here that it says that Ukraine was repelled out, trying to push further into Vobove from there. So it doesn't really show any change on the Rybar Russian sources map. And we do know Rybar on some of this, it does show more of a push from the Ukrainians than sometimes the Ukrainian Western sources show, but it does show that they're only right on the outskirts of Robotyny here, that these defensive works here are still well within, well not well within, but it's still very under control of the Russian forces, and there's still grey zone through Robotyny and fighting going on there. And Robotyny is definitely still grey zone, there's going to be a shitload of fight just because Ukraine have it under complete control. Anywhere where there's still active shelling, shooting, whatever going in, this is not a lot of distance. Even go from here in 1K, even just machine guns, you're still getting range into there as well. But it is saying that these defensive works are then under more control. But then we're going to move a little bit further up as well. Now, what have we seen around Uruzani? Now, I do want to talk about this just a little bit more. Now, in this Prigozhin region, maybe I was wrong yesterday. I think I might have been having a bloody aneurysm in the brain because I would have sworn Ukraine made some territory here, but I must be incorrect, and I must have clicked the bloody things the wrong way, that Russia did make a lot of ground between the 7th and the 8th in this area. I must have been looking at it in reverse, but that is confirmed that it's there, and that's of course confirmed from this map as well from yesterday. This is where I thought the two maps were different. Now, we don't see any movement around Novodonetsky, Novomosky, or Zavatny here, where we do talk about, no, there isn't much movement at Zavatny, but there is a lot more shelling around Novodonetsky, Novomosky, in around here where Ukraine is trying to push. But if we then look on the daily Ukraine map update, let's have a look. So Novomosky, we do see Ukraine makes some ground just on the western side across here, across where this waterway is. So do make some small bit of ground, but that's the only map update we have in there. Now, we're just going to go then into, of course, Mariinka. Now, we don't see any change on either of these maps, but ISW do say that Russia do claim more control in this area here. So, of course, we're looking 1, 2, 3, 4, let's just say 4 blocks up. Let's see what this is saying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe. So maybe Deep State is saying that there is more control up into there from than the main road here. Let's have a look at then what some of the other maps are showing of this similar area. So let's then look at the Suryak maps. Now, this isn't actually showing as much as I believe either of them. This is then the main road. So it's showing more on the northern side, but much less, I believe, at least than the Deep State on than the southern side. But let's look what he says. Situation west of Donetsk. During the week, Russian army managed to advance again in the town of Mariinka along the streets of Nabezhna, Kasanova, Shakista, and this. Clashes have reached the lake area, but it's not confirmed that Russian forces have consolidated its positions around it. As it was mentioned some days ago, there is a big grey area between both sides, which the Ukrainian army only controls 20% of the town. And there's a big grey area because there's just no fucking cover in this area. We've seen tanks moving in and tanks getting taken out with artillery, ATGM, things like this. It's a big grey area because there's just nothing left there bar rubble. Now let's have a look and compare then the Deep State map to this area too. So this is yesterday's of this area from Rybar here. That's their newest update. And let's have a look at compared to Suryak. And these are showing very, very similar here, which all show a little bit different. Now, Rybar does definitely show the centre bit in here is maybe similar, but there's a far more northwestern push up to this river. So talking up around here as well. So very interesting what is happening then in Mariinka, but that's not going to be make or break anything around this area. Now, where we are going to push is where we have seen some updates in around Opitny in this region. So I did miss this a couple of days back, but we do see then between yesterday and today that change there. Let's then have a look on the what's it called, daily Ukraine map update. Let's go till yesterday to today. No real change being shown, but we do see this area becoming more and more pushing very close to where this held by 2014 areas. And what is important here is they're pushing for then this. This is then the airport. So let's have a look. This one, how far Ukraine is away from the airport, 1.8 kilometers through there. So trying to push down to then this airport, which could be very important. Now let's talk about this same region from Suryak maps. Day 561, situation north of Donetsk. During the last days, Ukrainian army advanced south and recaptured a series of positions adjacent to the town of Pitny. This may be a little bit harder to line this up, but we will do it. So see this intersection here. This is then this intersection on this curved road through here, and it's taking the same positions. That'll disappear, but showing that position is the same position basically that we're seeing there as well. So very, very similar. Then we're going to move further up again, and where we're going is up then into Bakhmut, where we have seen some interesting changes and some different across some different maps. No, we see from yesterday till today, up to the north of Kurdomivka here, we do see Russia make some ground, pushing back on this railway. So this is the railway that runs down through our mouse is pushing back on that railway. We did see from, let's go from the 6th, we do see Ukraine advancing in here. The 7th have a push down to the railway, and then the 7th, the 8th, 9th, we do see Russia have a push back out from Kurdomivka there as well. And no more other changes, at least on this map up around that area. Let's look on then the daily Ukraine map update. Now, this is the area, Klishkivka, Andrivka, Kurdomivka here, and we don't see too much of a change other than that Ukrainian push down that railway there. We know there's a lot of fighting, and Ukraine is trying to get in and around that sort of flank there as well. So let's talk about this on the Suryak map. So situation south of Bakhmut, Ukrainian army increased its gains around the railway southwest of Andrivka. In addition, clashes are taking place in the northern part of Klishkivka, where Russian army is slowly withdrawing from the town. So we know that Ukraine hold most of Klishkivka, and they're exerting more force as per this arrow down here, saying that advancing southwest of Andrivka. So southwest of Andrivka, advancing down in these areas. So Ukraine is pushing fairly hard in there. Now let's have a look then at Andrivka on this map. So this is, of course, Andrivka. Let's zoom in here, get this across. So it is showing on this, the Kurdomivka in here, that it is basically grey zone all the way up down on this train line down here, which I believe even the deep state show not that much. So it doesn't show on the Rybar Russian sources this new push out to the north of Kurdomivka here as well, that Ukraine is pushing right on down into Andrivka, and then the railway here, which we know is very important. But legends, today, that is all we have. We have had a lot of slower days back to back, and some of the dangers of this is people will start losing interest in this war, and the interest needs to stay high if support also stays high. You and me in this, we are in, I guess, a bit of an echo chamber bubble because we're interested in this. Because we're interested in it, the algorithm pushes it more than upon us, so that flows on to more people, or flows at least that it seems more important in our lives than maybe the regular person. So if things don't really happen, the regular person may lose more interest in this, and of course democratic systems flows on from there. Do I think Ukraine still have a chance? Of course. Do I think Russia's still very dangerous in this? Yeah, absolutely as well. But I hope that you are having a fantastic Saturday and a fantastic rest to the weekend. I'm not sure if I'll be here tomorrow, but we will see. I'll see you next time I see you, and have a fantastic day. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never feel obliged. Save your money for a beer or a coffee. All right. Thanks, guys. See you soon.